You and I need to have an honest conversation, right now, before your life drifts another mile in a direction you never chose. Because the most dangerous thing in your life is not your lack of time, money, talent, or luck. It's the quiet architecture of your thinking. Not the thoughts you remember, but the ones that run in the background. The ones that decide what you notice, what you ignore, what you believe is possible, and what you never even try to reach for. Listen closely. You are not just living a life, you are running a mental operating system. That operating system writes your future, line by line, while you convince yourself you're improvising. If that makes you feel seen or exposed, good. It should. This is where change begins. Let's start with a picture. Imagine you are standing at a crossroads with three paths. The first path is the one you've always taken. Familiar, low risk, low growth. The second path is glamorous but unstable. High risk, high reward. The third path is invisible because your mind never learned it exists. You cannot choose the third path because your thinking has already filtered it out. Your future, then, is decided not by what you want, but by what you can perceive. Plato warned us about this in the allegory of the cave. Most people mistake the shadows for reality. They do not lack courage. They lack light. What is the cave today? Algorithms that feed you what keeps you still. Beliefs inherited from people who were afraid. Habits that promise comfort and steal years. The cave is any mental model that makes you feel safe and small at the same time. Here is an uncomfortable truth. Your thinking is not private. It leaks. It shapes the room when you enter. It trains other people how to treat you. It determines whether opportunities recognize you when they pass by. Nietzsche said, "We are unknown to ourselves." He was right, but he didn't say we must remain that way. The discipline of philosophy exists to turn the unknown self into the examined life. So, ask the question you avoid. What patterns of thought are quietly deciding your future? Catastrophic storytelling. Every risk becomes a ruin. Confirmation hunger. You search for agreement, not truth. Borrowed metrics. You measure your life with someone else's ruler. Emotional outsourcing. You let mood dictate meaning. Perfection ritual. You delay action until the fear feels polite. Bonhoeffer, writing from a prison cell, called stupidity the greater threat than malice. Not because people are foolish, but because they surrender their judgment to the crowd. When we stop thinking critically, we become carriers of decisions we never made. That is how futures are stolen without a single broken lock. Let me be more precise. Psychology says your mind runs two tempos. One is fast, automatic, narrative-driven. The other is slow, deliberate, evidence-seeking. The fast system is brilliant for survival and terrible for complex decisions. It predicts instead of perceiving. It completes patterns instead of questioning them. It protects your ego by editing your reality. The slow system is effortful. It costs energy. It asks, what would convince me I'm wrong? A question that sounds like treason to the ego, but is loyalty to the truth. Your future improves the moment that slower system becomes your default for choices that matter. Try this today. When you feel certainty hardening in your chest, pause. Ask yourself, what data would change my mind? If you cannot name any, you're not thinking, you're protecting. Protection is not a strategy. It is a stall with a halo. You may say, but the world is unfair, and you would be right. Machiavelli would tell you that fortune is a river. It floods without apology. But he also said that fortune favors the prepared, those who build levees before the storm. Preparation is not sterile optimism. It is disciplined pessimism, confronting the worst-case scenario and designing your response now while the room is quiet. That is how thinkers become builders. That is how ideas grow legs. Here is the twist. The future is not won by thinking more. It is won by thinking differently. Most people try to outwork failure with volume, more plans, more tabs open, more motivational noise. They drown their doubt with ambition and call it vision. Do not multiply noise. Change the signal. Trade self-flattery for self-audit. Trade projection for practice. Trade intensity for clarity. Let's talk about the stories you tell yourself. Every day you narrate a biography in progress. I'm the kind of person who... Be careful. Rehearsed identity becomes a cage. The brain loves consistency. It would rather be consistent than correct. So you keep making choices that make your story true, even if the story is outdated. Here is a gentler, braver sentence. I am the kind of person who updates. That single commitment is a lever. It makes failure a teacher, not a verdict. It turns embarrassment into tuition. It keeps you humble enough to learn and proud enough to persevere. This is not motivational wallpaper. It is strategy. The most powerful force in your psychology is not willpower. It is environment. Design your environments to make good thinking easy and bad thinking inconvenient. Curate inputs. Subscribe to contradiction, not comfort. Set decision windows. Important choices deserve calm time, not tired time. Create friction for impulsive habits. If it's too easy, you will do it too often. Write before reacting. Language is a mirror that catches your cognitive distortions. Measure what matters. Track behaviors, not fantasies. A brief story. A person wakes up every day and says, "Today I will be bold." They drink the same coffee, open the same apps, follow the same accounts, speak to the same people, sit in the same chair, think the same thought. Maybe tomorrow. One day, nothing changed. Except one thing. They moved the chair. That small, ridiculous act broke a ritual built on autopilot. From that day, they began changing other defaults. The route to work, the first app opened, the first question asked in a meeting, the weekly review of what a win looks like. Within months, the world looked different, not because the world changed, but because their perception did. The third path, the invisible one, started showing up. It had been there the whole time. This is what I'm asking you to do. Disturb your defaults, not with violence, with design. Now for a truth you may dislike. Most people do not lack opportunity. They lack precision. Vague goals produce vague progress. Be happier. Be successful. Be confident. These are fog, not coordinates. Replace them with verbs you can schedule and evidence you can see. Instead of be confident, practice speak once in every meeting. Instead of get healthy, practice cook dinner 4 nights a week. Instead of be creative, practice draft for 30 minutes before screens. Ambition is a map only when it contains terrain and time. What about fear? You will not outthink fear. You will only outgrow the situations that feed it. Fear is rarely a dragon. It is usually a fog. The antidote to fog is not courage, it is contour. Define the edges. What exactly am I afraid of? What is the cost of avoidance in 1 year? What skill would reduce this fear by half? Who has already solved this problem, and what did they measure? Label, estimate, experiment, iterate. The cycle is not glamorous, but it liberates. And yes, failure will visit you. Nietzsche again. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Craft your why, but don't worship it. Meaning should steer you, not suffocate you. When a plan fails, do not bury the purpose. Bury the method. Replace it with something uglier and truer that works. If you need a moral compass, listen to Bonhoeffer. The opposite of stupidity is not brilliance, it is responsibility. Thinkers who take responsibility do 2 difficult things. First, they refuse to outsource their judgment to tribes, trends, or rage. Second, they accept the consequences of choosing the third path, even when it offends the audience they once performed for. Responsibility is heavy, but it makes you strong enough to lift a future worth living. You might wonder where hope fits in. Hope is not a mood, it is a discipline. It is the stubborn practice of modeling a better outcome and giving it evidence to grow. When your mind is trained to collect reasons you can change, hope becomes rational. It is an investment, not a superstition. So, here is a concise framework to install, quietly, daily. 1. Illuminate the cave. 1 hour a week for pure learning outside your bubble. 2. Challenge the narrator, one belief you hold, find the best argument against it. 3. Design the environment. Change one default each month that keeps you small. 4. Decide like a scientist. Define disconfirming evidence before you act. 5. Review with rigor. Every Sunday ask, what did I update? And write it down. None of these steps are glamorous on camera, but your future is built in the unfilmed minutes. Now, a final twist, one that may feel like betrayal. You are not the thinker you believe you are. Your future is not decided by the ideas you admire during quiet nights. It is decided by the choices you automate on loud mornings. Your brain will always drift toward ease. That is not a flaw. It is physics. So, meet physics with architecture. Make the right thing easy, the wrong thing awkward, and the important thing scheduled. And if you forget everything I have said, remember this. Your life expands when your questions get better. Instead of asking, can I do it? Ask, what would make doing it inevitable? Instead of, what if I fail? Ask, what is the cost of never trying? Instead of, who am I to want this? Ask, who am I if I refuse to become it? If you are still listening, you already know what to do next. Not a grand gesture, one precise action that upgrades your thinking by 1 degree. Move the chair. Change the first app. Write the disconfirming evidence. Put the meeting on your calendar with your future self. Then show up for it like a promise, not a wish, because the way you think is deciding your future. But here is the power you've been missing. The way you design your thinking decides it faster. Step outside the cave, build the levees, practice the updates. And when you meet yourself a year from now, you should be unrecognizable. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally became the person your old thinking could not see. That is the quiet revolution. That is the work worth doing. And it begins now.